Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're all well on this stupendous Saturday. And this is video 3. I believe it's 3. 3 out of 3? That's amazing, ain't it? And you're also amazing, looking amazing. And I hope you've had a fantastic weekend so far. And you have an awesome weekend tomorrow, weekend day, an awesome Sunday. Anyway, we're going to get straight into the meat and potatoes, as I just want to raise something, right, that I don't really hear anyone talking about. I get that the vast majority of people who are on the guilters side of the Idaho 4, they won't talk about this because it won't be something that they even consider, because they don't really believe that there's any possibility that it could be proven that Bryan Kohbergers was anywhere else but at 1122 King Road on the night of this incident. But let's step back a bit, step back, Shadrach, and understand that there is a chance that it could be proven that Bryan Kohbergers was not actually in Moscow, Idaho. Now, there are still people getting confused, still going on about the cell phone data being the pings and talking about the pings and, it's the cell phone towers and all this. That's not what they're talking about. They're talking about the actual GPS, geolocation data that comes off of Bryan Kohbergers' handset, which could well prove that Bryan Kohbergers' phone not only wasn't switched off on the night that this happened, but he was simply somewhere that wasn't providing the phone cellular data, but it was indeed transmitting GPS location data. And if he was taking photographs, if he was on any kind of app in the background of his phone that could have been tracking him, or an iPhone that generally tracks you wherever you go, whenever you go, whatever you're doing and however you're doing it, there could be data that proves that he wasn't where Idaho County and the prosecution team would have you believe that he is. And there are other implications. Now, we're seeing some docs come out. We'll just have a quick look at these docs. These docs are like the Frankenstein of court docs. And what do I mean by Frankenstein of court docs? Well, this is basically like a redacted form. What they've done in this form, they've tried to, again, attack this survey that was sent out. But the funny thing is, you've got parts of this doc where it doesn't finish. There's sentences missing. You've got this section here which seems to have been copied and pasted into it. So yeah, this is a bit of a Frankenstein doc, but this is basically requesting that the defense team do not contact anybody who could potentially be a juror. Do you know what I mean? And they're going hard in the paint with this. And look, this is what all this is about. All this crap is about is Bill Thompson and co. don't want to lose this trial. They don't want to lose it. They don't want it to go out of Idaho County because there's certain things that benefit them keeping it here. And if they're confident in their case, if they're confident in the evidence that they have, and they're confident that Bryan Kohbergers was the man who done it, who gives a flying monkey's testicles where this guy is tried? Because it shouldn't matter, should it? It shouldn't matter. All that should matter is that he is tried fairly, he is seen by a jury of his peers, and he is ultimately convicted. And that shouldn't matter to them, but it does matter to them because it's losing control. And they depend heavily upon the bias of Idaho County community to allow them to try to convict Bryan Kohbergers with circumstantial evidence. And we're yet to hear how Bill Thompson is going to handle this latest revelation with Cy and his potential data that could show Bryan Kohbergers somewhere else. But again, as I've mentioned, this has further implications because we must understand that the entire story as we know it, the entire narrative as we know it, has been pushed by the fact that they are trying to tie the time of this crime in with a white Hyundai Elantra. And we also do have a knife sheath that has Bryan Kohbergers' DNA on it. Well, what about how many questions are going to have to be answered in the event that it does indeed come out that Bryan Kohbergers wasn't in the area? We do then have to look at the white Hyundai Elantra. So was the white Hyundai Elantra, did that still belong to the perpetrator? Did it belong to the perpetrator, or was this perhaps a delivery car that was coming in and it, in fact, had nothing to do with the crime whatsoever? We do have timestamps of Xana being on the phone on TikTok. Well, was that her on the phone, or was that someone utilizing her phone in order to try and make it look like she was still alive after, in fact, that she was already deceased, which would move in line with earlier statements made by Kathy Mabbott, and not only Kathy Mabbott, this 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock timeline, but also statements that came out of the Chapins family, which was, that 2 o'clock would be a time that would always stick in their minds, a dark time. And that doesn't even stop there. We do obviously have this apparent eyewitness, which is Dylan Mortensen, saying that she saw someone clad in black around this 4 sort of 15 a.m., I'm guessing after 4 o'clock in the morning. And we also have potential exculpatory evidence in Bethany Funk. So you think to yourself, and what I've always considered there was there always a conflict there between what the experience Bethany Funk had in comparison to Dylan Mortensen? But like I say, this 8 hours and what we believe is the crime happening at a certain time, and then there being an 8-hour period between that time and law enforcement being called. And we've always speculated and considered that's really strange. But if Bryan Kohberger is proven to not have been here, then that changes that time frame somewhat. It changes many, many things in this case. And I wonder who people are then going to start having to pull in and speak to. We already know that the University of Idaho have wiped out the crime scene, which in the event that Bryan Kohberger is proven to be somewhere else, and he was never there, especially if it turns out that the prosecution were burying evidence to prove that, then there's going to be some people's heads roll. Because this would this isn't just about Bryan Kohberger being on trial anymore. This is the state of Idaho, Latah County, the prosecution, the prosecutor's office, the University of Idaho, Scott Green, everybody. Everybody's eyes are now on the people around this case. Now, look, Bryan Kohberger could be the one who did it, and maybe this is just one last-ditch attempt by the defense to try and get this guy off. But if Ann Taylor has what she is saying she has, if she is saying that she has geolocation data coming off of Bryan Kohberger's phone that proves that he was not there, this is game over, done deal, and this is just now about Latah County and the prosecution team trying to convict a guy and trying to bury and further bury information. But we're all watching. We are now all watching this, and the spotlight's on them. But what questions do you feel there should be in the event that it is shown that Bryan Kohberger wasn't in Moscow, Idaho that night? Let me know down below. It will be interesting to hear your take. It's Saturday, my brain ain't engaged. I'll catch you all tomorrow.